Let's have a question. So we're talking about raising a poultry protector. This picture is my female with a chicken that she has learned to accept. So the question is, can Akbash dogs bond with poultry? Well, that's not an easy question to answer with a yes or no. I think there's a lot involved in that question. So let's talk about poultry in and of itself. The poultry do not display behavior typical to livestock. So we're talking feathers as opposed to mammals, that have fur. The noises are completely different. These sound very high pitched and a lot of fun to go and chase because they make more noise and flap their feathers when you chase them. Also, they can smell different. And that leads me into the second part. And what I thought was very interesting about this is what we're doing with our Akbash dogs is we're asking them to tolerate something that looks like a flight predator to them, especially if they haven't been exposed to it. So they're being asked to tolerate something with feathers, something that flaps its wings. It might not fly as far, but I know my male Akbash, he does not tolerate any flight predators in the pens with the animals. So there is that variable also. So it can be a little confusing to our Akbash dogs. And I mean, that's just exactly what they look like. They look like a flight predator. Also, chickens kind of goes with number one, can be seen as a fun toy. So the more you chase them, the more they squawk, they flap their wings, they have fast movements, and they have feathers. It looks just like something super fun to play with. So now let's talk about how, with all of those things in regards to poultry, how can we, quote, train our Akbash dogs to accept poultry? I put what is training and I left that blank because that is, there's a lot of opinions, a lot of things that work for people that don't work for others as far as training goes. So let's first, that's going to be different for everyone, but I'm going to talk about what works in this situation with me personally and some other mentors I have. So we got to make punishment part of the training and reinforce that punishment. And that would be, to quickly prevent the unwanted behavior. You want to make the behavior that they have exhibited towards the livestock, or towards the poultry, if it's inappropriate. You want to stop that quickly. So you want a sharp, sudden, surprising reaction to that. Now, I should have probably put the use of the word no first, because I believe your Akbash dog needs to know that from the beginning. They need to know the word no, and that can be taught to them, using a drag line, using the same methods, right? An unpleasant reaction to something they've done that they shouldn't. So that would be, with the word no, they should stop that behavior right away. If they don't, I say don't give a lot of attention to that, to the dog, to where they want to focus their attention on you. What they need to have is a surprising, sudden, sharp reaction to that unwanted behavior. Whether that be a loud noise, a clap, banging things together, taking a rolled up newspaper, and getting that close to the dog and hitting them, hitting near it, not hitting the dog, but hitting near the dog and surprising the dog with that, or a whip, something that has a loud noise. A lot of the times I find Akbash dogs really are perceptive to that. They kind of look at what that was, and they are able to correlate the two, the unwanted behavior with that sudden unpleasant reaction. Anybody have questions really quick before I move on to the next slide? Okay, so we'll go on.
Colette, I'm only seeing the number 1 on my screen.
Okay. Let me see.
Yeah, okay, now I see that.
Now now you see the rest?
Yes, now I see the rest. I see the picture and I see the number 2 and everything else.
Okay. Let me
Good.
know if anybody has problems seeing any of this.
Okay.
Thank you, Crystal.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. So I think that it's important to establish the punishment or the reinforcement first. That does help you in the next slide that we're going to talk about, which is barriers, fencing or pens. I use this a lot when they're pups, of course, and they're born. I use a barrier between them and the chicken, and that is at first necessary, but it also does provide exposure, so they're getting to know what this thing is and how it reacts and how it socializes and moves around and what noises it makes. And then, yeah, go ahead.
I'm not seeing the screen again for some reason. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Funny, it's like when I tap on it, it's worked. Let me see.
Okay, now you've gone ahead.
I know. I gotta go back.
Okay.
I didn't learn how to go back. All right. Let's see. Okay. Now.
Looks good.
Look good. Okay. Perfect.
Yep.
I'm gonna move that every time. That way, maybe it'll. I don't know if it's just doing something different. All right. So introductions are important. That starts from a young age. If you get a pup that hasn't been exposed to chickens or introduced, it's not a deal breaker. That we can. I'm going to go over a little bit what we would do different in the adolescent stage and in adulthood as well. You want to monitor the behavior closely. You want to see, if there is no fence, like you can see the picture of these pups. Obviously, we were taking the picture at the time. This is giving the pups the exposure past the barrier, but with us monitoring them rather closely. And if there's any unwanted behavior, it is an unpleasant, surprising reaction to that unwanted behavior. We have here place the pup near chickens with fence as the barrier. Again, that's important, especially when you're not there or you can't be there. I do find, of course, chickens like to roost on high places. So if the fence is not high enough, that chicken can get itself into the pen with the puppies, which is not ideal. So you want to watch that too. If they're able to be closed up at night where they can't see that or be around the chickens, that would be a good idea, especially when you can't be there to watch. And then establish a routine. Routine is so important for Akbash dogs. They do pick up so much of just your behavior, what you present as normal, what you make as part of the property and a part of what they need to protect. Okay, this is a picture here of my daughter with the puppies. You want them to be with you in this way, to look for you for some guidance, but they're very independent, which is what we want more often. So here you have a pup that's with Jordan, and then you have one looking at the chickens, wondering what are these things? Are they normal? And these pups have been exposed to chickens in a way that they were in a fence away from them. So they're getting a little more freedom and being able to get closer. Like I said before, routine, whatever you make normal becomes normal. If the poultry are part of the environment, I keep saying chickens, but I will go into a little bit about, I have one puppy that went to a home close to me that actually protects ducks, and he's doing really well. But anyways, we want to make it part of the environment. These chickens are here and they're here to stay, and they are important to the production, whether that be meat or egg production, and they need to be protected. So the Akbash dogs will see them as normal, as part of the environment. They may not 100% bond with the chickens, but over time, the routine, it's just they're part of the environment. Again, exposure. You need to get them used to the noises chickens make. the movements chickens make, and how chickens interact. You may have a mama hen that does not tolerate a puppy well, and that is a sudden reaction towards that pup. And if you're able to see that interaction, that's awesome, because you could see, does the pup cower down like it would to a doe who's just kidded? Um, how is that puppy going to react to that chicken doing that? It could be a completely different reaction. So if you're there to correct that, you have made 10 steps in the process to getting that puppy used to chickens or poultry, because we're there to see that reaction and then provide the proper response. Okay, real quick, we have some little pups here. 5 to 10 weeks. This is when it's important to have the barriers, but it's also important for that exposure. This,
Colette,
yes, ma'am.
I'm not seeing the screen again.
That's right.
Okay, there we go.
Isn't
Perfect.
It funny? I just moved the cursor, and it. All right. So let's see here. This is probably a little repetitive, just because this is, when I say exposing the pups, introducing the pups, and then having a barrier, that's what we do here, because I do have free range chickens. So we have to set up that type of environment, which also, helps the pups exposed to poultry. And you want to be exposing them and have them in the same area. And if it's done at an early age, from this 5 to you can actually focus on the puppy's unwanted behavior, because they're a little uncoordinated. So you can get a couple steps on them. Now, as the pup approaches adolescence, this is a little different. Everybody knows, I think, that's had Akbash dogs, that there is a time frame, whether that's 6 to 12 months or 6 to 18 months, where sometimes it can seem like they're reverting back, or they're not. They're just kind of trying things out. I find that mine did that at that age, and it was mostly early morning or at dusk. They would do things that they normally wouldn't have done. So this one is a little tricky. You may have to take that adolescent pup and put that fence barrier back up, especially if this is the main type of livestock you're wanting them to protect. And that way you can catch the unwanted behavior, and then only have the adolescent dog with the chickens when you can monitor that. There's a couple things also that I tell people to use, besides the fence. If you can just sit out, and this is assuming you've taught them the word no. If you can sit out with them with your morning coffee, have them on a drag line, then they do something they shouldn't do, and that's what you're kind of hoping for. You're hoping they do something they shouldn't do. Let's say they go to catch this chicken that's laying an egg, because they make some crazy noises when they start laying eggs. So then the dog goes and tries to get that chicken. You have the drag line there, and as the dog does that, you can yank on that drag line pretty well, and then ignore the behavior from there on. The dog will kind of maybe look at you, but you don't want them to focus on you. That you want them to focus on that bad behavior, and that way they choose the right thing to do, because they are independent dogs. They can make choices, and they can learn from those choices. And then adulthood is very similar to adolescence in a way that, if you're unsure of an adult Akbash dog, that you've gotten what their exposure is, then start with the fence. Just start introducing the chickens, start introducing the poultry, gaining exposure. The more exposure, the better. If you're able to just let them hear the chickens lay eggs, hear them make the funny noises, flap their wings, the ducks walking around, squawking and making different noises is good also. I know that this is probably the end of this, but just know that if you start it right, it will end well. I have free range chickens here that my female would not tolerate at all. You know, she would eat them. So we've gotten past that and we've gotten to the acceptance level. She will not bond with them, whereas my male is a little more apt to bond. He can let the chickens walk around him, over him, whatever, and he's not, you know, phased by that too much. But he was started younger. We got Rasha when she was 6 months old, so you know that exposure was very important, and keeping her separate from the chickens until we were able to monitor her behavior was also important. Um, you, you know, I don't blame her when she would kill the chickens because she was not exposed properly. So then you take a few steps back, right? You're asking the dog a lot when you're asking them to protect poultry, in my opinion. They are more than capable of doing that. But if there is an instance where you've let your guard down and that dog has gotten a chicken, um, I don't think that it's beyond repair. You can start back and start again. I've had decent luck with my female in that regard. The puppies are exposed very early. That doesn't mean that they won't revert back or do things they're not supposed to do. So I tell owners, yes, I have them around chickens, but you need to monitor that closely, and it does take some time. Okay. Are there any questions? Or even comments? Like if you've tried something or had something happen, I love to hear stories. It's my favorite thing.
I just have a few comments. The fencing that you talked about and everything, that is a really good idea. And I know it might seem, well, the puppy's in a pen, he doesn't get to get out and do anything. But at the same time, if he's pinned up near the poultry and he can watch them, and this even goes for the adult dog that's being exposed to poultry for the first time, I mean, they are learning. We shouldn't feel badly for the puppy, whatever. But and two, we don't want the puppy to think that, you know, when we're not there to monitor, we don't want them to kill livestock and develop bad behaviors. So the pens and the proper fencing is a really good idea, as far as working with the poultry and even with, sheep and goats. If you're not there to monitor a pup's behavior, them being in a pen, uh, separate from livestock would be better than them developing bad behaviors when you're not there. Um, and the thing you talked about there, as far as taking your coffee out there and watching them there in the morning or whatever, and you're waiting for them to do something wrong. That's something a friend of mine years ago told me, because I told her, I said, I don't have time to sit around and wait for her to do something wrong, because I had a dog chasing chickens actually at the time. And she goes, set them up to fail, and then put them in a situation where they will do something wrong, and then you can correct the behavior. And so it's a kind of a time-saving way to do some training, because I know everybody's busy and they have other jobs and something, but that's what I did. And it has been an effective tool, is just put them in a situation where they will fail, and then you can correct them.
Exactly. And I think, a lot of the expectations are not realistic. So if somebody, and I've had a ton of people come and just expect this dog to bond with poultry, and I try to give them this isn't, it's not natural. It's not natural for them. Yes, they've been exposed, but it's not natural. So if you can, like Crystal said, if you can get them to fail, I mean, that's golden, because with Akbash dogs, I find it only takes reprimanding maybe once or twice. With poultry, it could be a little more, but they learn very quickly. And if you can catch that bad behavior, it's, yeah, you might be just fine carrying on from there. Animal monitoring, and then they don't make a mistake again. So, All right.
Well,
Well, I mean, that kind of concludes the topic. And if anybody has questions or comments, anything, let us know. Also, don't forget we will be posting on the Facebook page for different ideas, things that you're interested in knowing on how to work with your Akbash dog, or maybe even just their behaviors, their characteristics, the history. There's a lot of things that we can cover and record these so we have them saved in our files section of the Akbash Dog Association of America on Facebook. No questions, comments. I'm so glad you guys joined us. Good
Thanks a lot, Colette.
See myself. It's good to hear
Ruth
you
Ann,
again.
you've been around chickens and dogs a lot. Is there
Yeah,
anything
I kind of hesitate to comment on this in a way because I mean, I started with back in about 1990, I think it was. I started out with an 8-month-old Congo bitch and brought her in. At that time, I had dairy goats. I had exotics, deer and antelope. I had fowl, mostly chickens. I had a few guineas. Honestly, she came from Tams, and I brought her in, and I never had an issue with her with the poultry. She went after the baby deer once because they got very flighty, and that kind of upset, got her kind of upset. But one time of reprimanding her for that, and that was fine. She actually would end up almost mothering the fawns and the nilgai babies. And I never had then I added an Akbash female. Then I added Jasur, the import male pup. I never had a kill or even them really chase the fowl. Of course, I did have a jungle fowl female that was voracious with the dog. She was 1.5 pounds and she could terrorize anything on the place. And I think that they just stayed away from the fowl. I haven't really had any problem until just recently with a 2-year-old Akbash female with my guineas. Initially, she accepted them, and I have quite a few. She accepted them. She didn't bother them. She was here for 6 weeks. Then she started just killing in a killing spree. And I really, I look back and I try to think about what it was that was so different. And the one thing, I mean, I've had as many as 90 guineas here loose. Right now I had about 35. But the erratic behavior of the guinea is so different than having ducks or chickens or turkeys, which I've had all of those. And I think that really just played into her, finding herself something to do and having one heck of a good time doing it. And I also, it's really been really hard for me to kind of, look at the bigger picture and see what could cause that. Where I lived before, there was a lot of activity. The dogs were always very active. They were at the fences, it was another dog, it was somebody walking down the road, it was cars going by, there was a lot of commotion. And we also were out in the barns sometimes 10 hours a day or more. But here, where I am now, there's nothing really goes on in front of my property. So the dogs don't have the same level of activity as they did in my former home. And I think, in a way, it's boredom for a younger dog. Now, when I got Rocky, she was 6 years old, or 7 years old rather. She came in, and within a very short time, she just accepted everything here, including the guineas. And at that point, I had 90 guineas, and she just never bothered any of them. But she was an older dog. She was a lot more sedate. She stayed with her sheep. She was active that way. The younger dog was not bonding to the sheep that I had. She was looking for something to find to do. And I think that the guineas were the outcome, because they gave the most reward because of their flighty attitude. I don't know, so, that's for after having Congles and Akbash for the better part of 30 years and having not one kill, to have, to have a dog come in here and just decimate, I just have had a hard time looking at that. So that's my comment. I don't know,
No, it's good because everybody experiences different things. That can be one of them. I mean, every dog is different. And what they have, like you said, the level of activity can change. So then boredom sets in. There's things that they want to try to do, or they're just prone to have a characteristic that's not 100% acceptable. So then it's like, Ruth Ann, what do you think you would do in this scenario? Do you revert back to walking that female up?
I think that it wasn't going to work under this situation. And the dilemma is, I don't have a way right now to completely lock up my guineas. So, so kind of a catch-22 there. But I would say, I mean, I had puppies, I had all these dogs, all these years, and like I said, not one kill. And to go to this kind of a complete 180 was really, it really made me rethink a lot of things. And I really think that a lot of it has to do with the situation that the dog has been put in here, where it is so peaceful and quiet, and there's nothing for it to do. And if it won't go out with the livestock and bond with them, it's going to find something else to do. And unfortunately, the guineas were the pecking order there. And, I mean, that's my thoughts. I'm open for opinions on this.
No,
But that
I
has
agree.
a lot to do with it.
I agree, Ruth Ann. A lot of times it is the activity level and, how the dog reacts to that activity level. I remember taking in an older dog from my dad's house. I'm trying to think. It was a neutered male. He was maybe 5 or 6 years old. He had never been around chickens except for maybe when he was a puppy. But anyway, he got here to my house. Anyway, he didn't do anything. I mean, he just went with the goats because that was his favorite thing. And he just completely ignored the chickens like they weren't even there. He never gave them a second look. But going off of the goats, he was happy and content with that.
Right.
Now, after that, I got a 5 or 6 year old female from my dad. She was spayed. Anyway, she came here. She had never been around chickens, and it took a while for me to get her under control. But I finally broke her of chasing and killing the chickens. She didn't kill very many, but I was watching her pretty closely, but it was difficult. And for her, it was exciting. For the other dog, not so much. He would just soon, but I mean, so it's, each dog is different. And then how much activity level, I think, makes them kind of content, I guess, in a way.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, with her not bonding with the sheep, or, having, she just really was a barn sitter. She wasn't interested in going out with the sheep. And she was just, I think she was just looking for something to keep her occupied. I had cats, I had kittens at the same time. She had ever bothered them, not at all. But the guineas, like you said, I think the guineas were the bottom of the pecking order there as far as that, and they were also provided the most fun. So anyway, I don't know, but it was it's very frustrating after, like I said, after almost 30 years of not one kill, to have just this blow up in my face.
And another thing Ruth Ann said is, and I was able to do this. It's not so much you need to lock up your dog part of the time. Part of the time you need to lock up your poultry. So the ability to lock up your poultry does help, mediate the situation so that you can then have control over the situation. Your animals don't have control over the situation.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a big thing too, is if you can lock your poultry up and lock the dog up, have them both locked up, or one's out and one's not out, or whatever. It's a good thing to be able to lock your poultry up, if you need to.
Yeah. And I have a pen that they were, and I could gather them at night, but this is a newer crew that is not going in at night. It's very hard from one person to round them up, and so therefore, a lot of times they're just out, and they're out early in the morning when when things can happen. So it's a whole different ball game on my end, but both with the guineas and the dog.
Right.
Crystal, when you said that you broke her of it after a while, do you mind sharing what that was that you did?
Well, part of the time I was putting her in my poultry pen and I was out there with her. And at first she didn't care that I was standing right there. She would chase a chicken and try and get hold of it. Anyway, I had a stock whip, which I could reach out and, give her a whack on the butt and tell her no. And she would stop. I mean, she understood the word no, but she would want to do it again because it was just so tempting for her. Now I did eventually use an electronic behavioral training collar on her, and that's kind of where I got the most, that was my kind of the finishing results, that I got with her. She finally just like, no, I don't want any more, shocking. That shocking sensation is just, most dogs, and it doesn't take very much most of the time. Most dogs are actually quite sensitive to electricity. So it just takes smaller amounts. And most of the time they turn around pretty quickly, and that's what I used on her, and it was an effective tool for her.
Okay, good to know. I that's one thing I was going to mention. It's the shock collars. The ones who bought the puppy from me, that are like his exclusive job so far is to protect the ducks. Um, they are using a shock collar, and that's for multiple reasons. They don't have a fenced area, although he's kept in a fenced area when they're not watching. So he does, if he goes outside that border, does get a little shock. And then if he's inappropriate with the ducks, he gets a shock. But he's been exposed from very early age. He was kept in a small pen. He had shelter and all of that, but he was kept there just to kind of watch and see the ducks. And I'm hearing that he even lays with them. He prefers to be near them. So that exposure was very important at a young age. But that I warn them all the time that he's doing great, and I'm so excited that he's doing great. But he can revert back to unwanted behavior. So just to watch that, because during that adolescent age, you just don't know. They will try different things that they know they shouldn't. And if you have a shock collar or you've trained them to different, different responses from yourself, then they learn pretty quickly.
Yeah, and to the behavioral shocking collar, as the puppy gets older and you're allowing him more space and he's further away from you, you know, some of the shocking collars like mine, it goes up to, I think, 2 miles away. It allows some distance and you can still correct them. So it helps if, if you can see that, 200 yards off or something like that, they're doing something wrong. You can shout the word no and, just give a light, whatever's necessary, the level of shocking just to stop the behavior. It can be a very effective tool.
And I also want to reiterate what Ruth Ann said too, that 30 plus years and then not an issue, and one dog has, been unable to accept them. I think statistically that's amazing. Um,
Yeah, really.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's it's not foolproof. I mean, we can't sit and say that this training or these methods are 100% going to work. I think it does lay the groundwork or a foundation of what to start with and how to start, you know, teaching the dog to accept poultry, making it part of everyday routine, and then correcting unwanted behavior. Those are basics. If you can get that down, I think most likely your dog is going to perform well. You may have one that just doesn't accept poultry, won't accept poultry, or that has decimated it so that you don't have time, to work with that and start these steps. And that's okay. So that dog would be better in a different environment, um, or in a different situation. So that's, and that, to me, that doesn't mean that you weren't successful. It doesn't mean the dog wasn't successful, but it does mean that there are variables, right? So the dog might be better suited somewhere else, and then you can start in a different way with a different pup or another dog or whatever the case may be. But I read things and I'm always astonished by what I read. But I understand that what they are saying in some of these articles is that if your dog killed a chicken, you have failed in your training. I don't necessarily agree with that, although yes, you might have missed a few steps in there, or you might not have had the luxury of time, or the exposure might not have been there. So that, in my opinion, you have to find what works for you and what's a good situation. Fencing and pins are great, and I use them all the time when we have pups or when we have poultry or when we need to put up poultry. You can do that. But ideally, you want a cohesive environment where they accept the poultry. And most of the time that works. There will be times where it doesn't.
Right. I agree that not every dog fits every situation. It doesn't mean that the dog isn't a good dog and isn't a valuable asset. It just needs to find the right situation for it. And I think this dog probably would be better, where it doesn't have that luxury, and also maybe a little bit more activity would have helped. And I think, I really do think that activity level here is at such a low that that's a problem for a dog that really has more, of a higher drive for being active, just being active.
Right. And it doesn't mean that you failed, and Colette mentioned it too. Just because your dog killed a chicken doesn't mean that you fail. Just back up, start over again, go back a few steps. If it means pinning the dog for, to keep him from, the unwanted behavior, so be it. But it's not a failure. Training dogs is not easy. If it
No,
weren't,
no,
everybody would be doing it.
that's true. That's true. Well, I really appreciate the program and appreciate the efforts of the directors to do these educational programs. I really think that's a wonderful thing for the membership. So thank you.
Yep, I think this is going to turn out pretty good. Rodney or Sarah, did y'all have any questions?
I lost everyone. Sorry.
Hey, we just got back home from the market. We've been listening as we've been able to, but we want to listen to the recording. And we're so grateful also for this conversation and the fact that you're recording it, so that we can listen in on a lot of what we missed. And we probably will have questions after that. But how will we have access to the recording?
So I hope that we will have it on the files section on the Akbash Dog Association's Facebook page.
Okay.
So there's a lot of good material there. So we're going to try to put these there as well. Just
Okay.
figure out how to do that. But I don't think we'll be able, with everyone's help. And I lost connection a little bit there, but I wanted to go and say really quick to Ruth Ann that you had mentioned thanks. And like, we couldn't do this if it wasn't for, you know, Sarah and Rodney being involved, and Ruth Ann and Crystal being here. The stories and the experiences is, I think, what a lot of us learn from, and I appreciate you guys being involved and sharing those. I've only owned Akbash for maybe almost 5 years, so I have mentors, and there's people who, man, you just really lean on for the questions and their experience. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your time, Colette.
And that's partly why we have, you know, that's the benefit of a breed club like the Akbash Dog Association, is that it is a resource of information, people who've, you know, had dogs in different situations, and we're meant to help one another. You know, it's a good thing. It helps to help one another. It helps the breed be more effective. So that's the benefit of a breed club. I'm glad we have one.
Absolutely.
So we'll go to the website. That's where it will be downloaded.
On the Facebook page.
Oh, I'm sorry. Got you. Facebook page.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a file section on the Facebook page. We're going to try and get it in there.
Very good. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us. That'll be the end.
Yeah. Have a great
Bye-bye.
rest. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Yep, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.